I would like to say what's up to those flat earthers and globe proponents for taking their time out to listen to what I have to say. This is part two of the Equator. I have a series that I'm doing called The Magic Flat Earth, and this is part two of the subtitle, which is called The Equator. To recap last week, I showed how at the equator the star trails appear to arc in a straight line, an arc straight line, and at the equator they appear to arc in opposite directions. And my point was, why would this happen on a flat earth? I didn't get any logical answers from flat earthers. We see that it rotates, the stars do, counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern hemisphere. And I also pointed out that the equator divides the visibility of the celestial poles. So when you're at the equator, you see the points of rotation in the southern hemisphere as well as the northern hemisphere. But as you move 1 degree south, you do not see the northern celestial point, and as you move 1 degree north, you do not see the south celestial point, which makes no sense, absolutely no sense if the earth is flat. But I showed how it makes a lot of sense on a globe. But this week, I want to just point out that the equator is the dividing line of the tropical cyclones' directions of rotation. When we look in the northern hemisphere, we see that cyclones, or what we call hurricanes, rotate in a counterclockwise direction. And when we look in the southern hemisphere, we see that cyclones or tropical cyclones rotate in a clockwise direction. Why would be my question. Why? Why would they rotate in opposite directions and the equator be the dividing line? I'm talking to you, flat earthers. Why? What sense does it make? For a stationary flat earth, what sense does it make for a stationary flat earth to have these cyclones rotate in opposite directions and the equator be the dividing line? Now, I've heard some flat earthers say that the sun, its motion, is what causes the directions of the cyclones, which absolutely makes no sense at all, because we know that the sun traverses over the Tropic of Cancer at one point of the year, and it's in between the Tropic of Cancer and the equator at another point of the year. Then it's at the equator at one point of the year. Then it's south of the equator at another point of the year. However, the equator is the dividing line, not where the sun is traversing over, right? We don't see cyclones rotate in a clockwise direction south of the Tropic of Cancer, but yet above or north of the equator. So in other words, when the sun is over the Tropic of Cancer, the tropical storms are not divided in their direction of rotation from the Tropic of Cancer. It doesn't happen. So it's a reason why the equator is, in fact, the dividing line. And what is that? What is the Coriolis effect? Simply put, or put simply, it's the Coriolis effect makes things like planes and currents of air traveling long distances around Earth appear to move at a curve as opposed to a straight line. So when we look at this illustration, we can see that in the northern hemisphere, being as though the equator is moving at a faster speed then away from the equator, it can create the wind or air can be deflected. So the closer you are to the equator, the faster the air is moving versus being further away from the equator, which if you have a tropical depression, creates a deflection within the depression. And so you can start to have winds swirling. And if they get fast enough, that tropical depression becomes a tropical storm. So when it reaches around 39 miles an hour, it goes from being labeled a tropical depression to a tropical storm. And if it reaches 73 miles per hour or above, it moves from being labeled a tropical storm to a hurricane or a typhoon or a cyclone. And if you just look at closer to the equator, if the earth is moving from west to east, then the air coming from the equator would be traveling faster, where the air that's coming down from the north would be going slower, which would create a deflection that would be counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere, and vice versa in the southern hemisphere. And like I said before, the equator is the dividing line. And within 5 degrees of the equator, these storms or these tropical cyclones are not formed. And they do not cross the equator. I want you to think over that. The magic flat earth, the equator. It's magical on a flat earth, but it makes plenty of sense on an earth that is in rotation. And so because these storms or cyclones do not cross the equator, and I just explained why, because the deflection of the motion of the air at the equator creates that deflection, and therefore these storms would not form within that region because of it's the point or the line at which the deflection begins. So that makes plenty of sense on a rotating earth. I'm just asking flat earthers, how does it make sense on a stationary flat earth? Just talk to me in the comments, or if you want to come on my channel, we can do that too. I tried to get somebody to come on the channel and discuss stuff because he was speaking, I don't know if it was a he or she, they were speaking a lot of nonsense. You can see it in the comments of my last couple of videos, but they didn't want to come on. They had an excuse saying we're already having a live discussion, and I don't care for doing a whole bunch of typing, so they didn't want to do it. But anyway, I'm looking for an answer, flat earthers. Talk to you soon.